Okay, so next we have schizophrenia, right? Schizophrenia, definitely one of the more severe psychological disorders, right? Schizophrenia. Um, well, let's just for a moment go with the book's general definition of it, and then we'll talk about various versions and types of schizophrenia. So, schizophrenia, it's just a psychological disorder characterized by delusions, hallucinations, disorganized speech, and or diminished inappropriate emotional expression. Okay, so yeah, they're trying to give a general definition for all types of schizophrenia, which is really difficult to do. Uh, so a few of those things. Well, delusions, right? Delusions are false beliefs, right? So delusions are false beliefs, such as someone believing that they are Napoleon. I'm Napoleon. Yeah, I'm Napoleon. No, 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 no. I'm not. I don't believe that. But that would be a delusion if I believed that, right? Then you got hallucinations, which are false perceptions, right? Hallucinations, false perceptions. So you hear voices that are that are coming from nowhere, from nobody present. you actually see people following you around that are not really there, but you see them, right? And then just inappropriate uh, emotions, laughing when you should be sad, and various things like that. And disorganized speech, their logic, their speech can be all over the freaking place, right? Kind of depends on the type of schizophrenia. So they mentioned a whole bunch of general symptoms, but first let's look at the two different types of schizophrenia that the textbook mentions, right? So your textbook distinguishes between chronic schizophrenia and acute schizophrenia, right? So chronic schizophrenia, which is also called process schizophrenia. I know you students love it when we have multiple names for the same thing. Not funny? Okay. Well, anyway, chronic or process schizophrenia. Well, chronic means long term, right? So chronic schizophrenia or process schizophrenia, this is uh, this is the more well, let me just say, in my mind, this is kind of the more common type of schizophrenia, and I think I'm fair to say that's generally true, but I wouldn't necessarily ask you a question about that. Uh, but yeah, this is the kind of schizophrenia that usually first manifests itself in late adolescence, early adulthood, right? Late adolescence, early adulthood. Um, and it's usually triggered by some sort of stressful event, right? Some sort of stressful event. So, I had a college friend, went to a little old college for my undergraduate in Oklahoma. She was from Texas. When we graduated, she went up to graduate school at Ohio State University. And, well, early adulthood, right? And she stopped communicating with her family in Texas. So eventually her brother ventured up there to Ohio to make sure she was okay. And delusion, she believed that her brother was a robot, right? Uh, so who knows? The stress, right, of moving across the country, being someplace completely unfamiliar to you, uh, a huge university compared to the little one we went to as undergraduates, the stress of the work, in that program, somehow that triggered, right, this disorder. And I've lost touch with her now. I haven't spoken with her in many years. I hope she's better, but she continued to struggle, right, with schizophrenia. And the prognosis, the future, doesn't necessarily look that great. well, for someone in either kind of schizophrenia, I guess, chronic or acute. But in chronic, they make the point of saying that the psychotic, as they get older, the psychotic episodes tend to last longer, and the recovery periods shorten. So you can have, once again, someone with schizophrenia, they can have these, these phases where they've got the psychotic symptoms, and then, they'll have a period where those are mostly under control, and then they'll come back, so it's kind of like that, and it just gets worse as you age, generally speaking. We're talking generally speaking, though. It might not be the case with every individual, right? We're talking generalities here. So then the other, acute or reactive schizophrenia, right? Acute or reactive schizophrenia. Well, acute means short term, right? This kind of schizophrenia, right, the acute or reactive, can really happen at any point in someone's life, right? At any point in someone's life. So I dare say if there's and occasionally that happens, where a child might be diagnosed with schizophrenia, or somebody in the middle of his or her career might be diagnosed with schizophrenia, might have an acute schizophrenia. So it can begin at any age. And it's usually preceded, once again, by some sort of traumatic event or traumatic experience. And has a very extended recovery time, right? So it takes a long time to get over it. But they may get over it, right? It might take a lot of time. Of course, I'm not a clinical psychologist, so I don't get involved in diagnosing people. I'm not trained in it. But I think I've known someone with this, right? With acute reactive schizophrenia, where everything just changed in her life, right? And it may have been a result of earlier abuse in her life, but, had a good career and everything, and then boom, this hit, messed up everything. It really sucks, right? So, so like I've said, for all these disorders, it disrupts a normal life, right? It disrupts a normal life. And let's see here. What else do I want to say about that? It seems like there's something else I felt I wanted to say about that, but I think it's gone. So anyway, now in your PowerPoint slides, right? Hopefully you're going through everything, right? Reading the book and looking at the PowerPoint slides and doing the assignments on time, all that stuff, right? Well, in the PowerPoint slides, I list the different types of schizophrenia as well that I want you to know, all right? Because when you talk about schizophrenia in general, it's very hard to do in my mind. So I talk about the different types of schizophrenia that are still often talked about nowadays, all right? So basically, there's 5 different types of schizophrenia. Really, one of those is kind of, where it's in kind of remission. And then there's 3 that are very clear-cut, different types of schizophrenia. A 4th that is kind of a mixture of symptoms that doesn't fit the other 3. And then the kind that's largely in remission, although they don't really talk about necessarily schizophrenia ever being in full remission. But I guess it can be in some. But anyway, right? Oh, yeah, and I wanted to mention the psychosis, right? That's what I wanted to mention. So yeah, they mentioned these psychotic symptoms, right? The psychotic episodes last longer as you age in the chronic or process schizophrenia. Well, psychotic symptoms or a psychosis, not a diagnostic term in and of itself, but to say that someone is psychotic or, experiencing a psychotic episode or suffers from psychosis, what you're saying there is that they are out of touch with reality, right? They are literally out of touch with reality in that they do not know the difference between their hallucinations and delusions and the real world. They cannot distinguish, right? They cannot tell that these are hallucinations, that these are delusions. It's truth to them, right? And of course, there is where you get into some of stuff when you get to the legal system and that sort of thing. I mean, once again, people are not, well, if you're in a legal context, if someone is considered sane or insane, the main thing there is trying to determine if they knew at the time of their actions that what they were doing was wrong or not. All right? So if they were aware that what they were doing was wrong and they did it anyway, that's usually sane. Right? Insane would be where the person could not tell the difference, right, between their hallucinations, delusions, and the right thing. So when they murdered someone, they really believed they were doing something that God had ordered them to do, for example, right? Like there was that case a long time ago now of that mother in Texas. Well, she had 5 kids, I think, or something like that. And she drowned all her children, right? Now, she was found legally insane because she sincerely believed in her actions by drowning her children, she was saving their souls. She genuinely believed that. So she thought what she was doing was right. She did not know it was wrong, right? And that was a case of a postpartum psychosis, right? We might have heard of postpartum depression. Mother gets depressed after she gives birth. But this was postpartum psychosis, out of touch with reality, right? And so once again, this is an example of how, yeah, there are a lot of disorders we're not talking about, right? So anyway, now that I've gone a little off tangent on that, I better stop this video there and talk about the different types of schizophrenia that are on the PowerPoint slides in the next video. Okay.